All right, what's up, guys? So welcome to the RAD podcast. This is kind of this is our first episode, and so we'll see how it goes. But we're going to talk about bikes and stuff like that. In this episode, we're just going to be talking about the public's perception of BMX, and we're just going to start it with that, and then we'll probably get super in depth. This is Nick. I'm Doug. You know both of us, right, from the channel. But Nick, I'm just going to get you talking. So what's the current perception right now with the public on BMX?
The current perception?
Yeah, current.
I would say better than it has been, for sure.
Yeah.
I would definitely say that with the Olympics, the Olympics, has obviously brought out an entirely new level of progression in one sense, but also training. And I think the public relates to the training required much more than they actually relate to the progression itself. So
like the
I think
tricks that are being done and such, like they relate to the training.
Yeah, exactly. Like people are going to look at, what the athletes are now putting in, which is why I think you'll also see a lot more like people creating content and displaying on their Instagrams and stuff, like more of their training and talking more about like the hard work to get to like a world stage such as the Olympics, because everyone knows that it sucks to go to the gym. And I think part of being an Olympic athlete is being able to gym better than anybody else. Like it's riding for sure, but it's also, the ability to stick to a training regimen and really put in that work off the bike that's going to make such a difference. And so the public is now going to see these people more as actual athletes, and they're going to see it as more of like, oh, look, they're actually like training, like they're in very good physical shape. They're going to appreciate it more, because in the past it's just like, oh, like crazy tricks going on. That's crazy. That's cool. But I think there's a new appreciation for them as athletes. Whereas if you're in BMX or mountain bike, I feel like, you always had an appreciation for people with a lot of skill, but the public doesn't really relate to the skills that it takes to do a lot of these tricks, so they're going to appreciate it more from, I think, from the training and the actual like athlete part of it.
I see what you're saying. I was talking about this on, I don't know if it was one of my streams or what, but how, Daniel's one of the few people that I see post clips, and he's like working on this, and it's not a landed clip, but it's something he's working on, and traditionally you don't see that from very many people. You only see like the polished side of things, but now what you're saying is, so with the introduction, like the Olympics and stuff, people are starting to show the side of training or the journey for the Olympics and stuff like that. Like we see a lot of gym posts from Logan, and the Red Bull guys will always post like what they're doing in what's that Red Bull place in California that they're always working out at and stuff. But it opens the eyes to that whole thing, because I think the perception before, like I agree, it has changed more positively recently. Like before, it was kind of like you go, you mess up public property, you do drugs, and that's it, right? But if the training side of it and the competition side is what's being shown by people now, that's kind of changing how the public's viewing it.
Yeah, no, totally. I mean, I think it's weird because it's gone through so many different stages. Like we have, back in the 80s and 90s, and I'm younger than that. I was born mid 90s, so
yeah,
I wasn't there. I don't actually know. And I come from a family who was involved in it and stuff like that. So my upbringing and awareness of BMX is probably different than some people's. Like to me, bikes are what existed. Like bikes and motocross were the biggest things in my world,
in your world
as a kid. Yeah, in my world as a kid, those were the sports. And then it's a trip growing up, and then like going to high school, and pretty much maybe 5 people in the town participated in it, and then most people don't even know anything about it. And
Right.
it's almost like world shattering. You're like, oh, this is like my life. Like, this is my dream. And most people probably have never like bought a BMX DVD, you know, at the time. But then you have, you know, when I was like 6 or 7, you have the X Games. And yeah, even though skateboarding was definitely the biggest part, you know, everyone knows Tony Hawk. I think everyone knows Tony Hawk because of the video game. He's like the most weird famous person because, you know, if you ever check out his Twitter, he's got all those things where people think they recognize him, but they don't actually know. Yeah, because they know his name.
Look like
because
Tony Hawk, and he's like,
yeah, he's such a household name. And then when I think of household names for BMX, like you got Matt Hoffman and Dave Mira, you know, because Dave Mira with the X Games and the timing of Dave Mira being such on a different level than everybody else, when the sport was getting national TV coverage, and then, you know, him being known as like the Miracle Boy, he showed a lot of personality. He kind of gave like a different face to what at least I think was probably more of an underground thing. BMX was probably a lot more underground until, you know, that X Games era. And, you know, you had Dave Mira getting paid $300,000 a year to wear that Slim Jim logo on the chin of his full face helmet. And so that the contest wins and, you know, the big TV ads, and then his video game, I think at that time, BMX was kind of at like a peak where it was like the progression wasn't so insane. You know, Dave had just done the first double backflipping contest in, what was that, 2000 or 2002. And I feel like everyone can kind of relate to flips. Like, you could just stand there in your living room and be like, oh, that'd be crazy to flip upside down 2 times with like a BMX bike like I used to ride it as a kid.
So wait. You're saying like around that time, BMX had peaked in popularity, mostly because the stuff that people were doing was crazy, but not too crazy. Like, it was crazy enough that you could appreciate it and essentially relate to it, but it wasn't like you're scratching your head wondering like what's a quintuple whip, you know? That's what you mean?
Yeah, exactly. I think it was during the X Games, it was like, I think it was put on a platform, but yeah, the technicality wasn't what it is now. I mean, yeah, you had technicality in big foo-fa-noos and like deck tricks like that you don't see anymore. But you know, you watch someone do, you know, like Morgan Wade do a big old super whip on TV, and then Dave's doing a double flip, and then like a flip whip on a spine, or Ryan's doing sevens and they're jumping into the big walls and stuff. Like, that was all new, and you had these courses that allowed for like this kind of creativity, and everything seemed kind of like fresh, in my opinion. And, you know, you also had, of course, you know, you had skateboard park and you had like rollerblading park. And I think in that era, BMX really, really stood out when it came to park and dirt. And because it was like, oh, big jumps and people were crashing a lot. And I think, honestly, I think crashes have a big thing to do with public perception. I mean, if you see viral videos on the internet, if they have BMX, it's generally, if it's not our Willie, it's of crashes.
I'd look up Rampage crashes just because they're just crazy to watch, you know, but I wouldn't watch a normal Rampage run back in the day when I do that. I just look up Rampage crashes because people tumble down the mountains, and just watching it run it's like less viral.
Yeah. Anyone can relate to the idea of hitting the concrete or rolling down a mountainside, you know? And I think that's when it comes to, you know, like perception, it's can you relate to it? Like Doug, what would you think? Like, you know, we always talk about, you know, people in BMX and, you know, a lot of action sports, you know, they don't get paid nearly as much as, you know, NFL. You know, let's just use NFL, not counting baseball or all the other ball sports and puck sports, you know. If we're just comparing like BMX to NFL, we're not saying One has more talent. We're not saying one's a better athlete. We're not getting into that just yet. Why does NFL make more than BMX?
I mean, yeah, I'd say mostly because it's really easy to relate to the guy running the football down the field. I like everyone's done that as a kid, right? You've played football with your friends and everything like that. And so sitting there watching that, you can relate to it and you understand it. The rules of it are so simple. And you're like, all right, I mean, pretty simple. Football goes here, 6 points. Football goes through there, 1 point. Unless it's from here, then it's 3 points. And like everyone understands that and there's subjectivity to it. And then it's also got that whole rally behind like, oh, your favorite teams, rivalries, all that stuff. And where BMX is like, I don't know, it's 6 million times more complicated. It's like, wait, what's that obstacle called? What's that trick? Why is it switch? Why is that harder than this? Like, and everyone's ridden a bike, but not very many people have even bunny hopped, more or less done a backflip or anything like that. And so when you're sitting down, people don't like to be confused. And so if you're going to sit down to watch something and enjoy something, you're going to sit there and watch something that you can understand really easily and relate to. And, between those two options, if you're going to watch NFL or you're going to watch BMX, the NFL is just so much, it's like, to me, it's brain numbing. I don't watch football or anything, but it's because, I don't know, it's just more brain numbing. But for most people, that's kind of what they'd go with. And so eyeballs pay the bills, eyeballs get the money. And if there's more eyeballs on NFL, those dudes are going to make a lot more money than the bike rider doing the crazy stuff. That's my thought.
Yeah. No, totally. And I think it's, as someone who's, tried to make a living riding bikes and stuff, I hate to be that devil's advocate and have to explain to everyone why we don't get paid.
Right.
There's a lot of people that are like, oh, Rampage riders deserve so much more money. Yes, they do. But unless there's something that makes 20 million people tune into Rampage like they do for the Super Bowl, you need that advertising money. That's what's going to pay for it. You need views, you need ad spend. I mean, YouTube, the guys who have lots of subscribers make money because of advertising and brand deals. It's ad spend, creates the salaries. So like baseball, like Yankees, they sell a bunch of, merchandise and they get TV time and all this stuff, and they sell ticket sales. That makes them more money. Do those baseball players, is technically hitting a ball worth that much money? That's not the point. People pay to watch it, and they pay to support it. And so the thing is, though, is if you kind of look at it, I would like to rank like the paying sports as they start like the highest paying sports and then further and further down. To me, it's like, which is the easiest sport to follow when you're hammered or you've never participated?
Yeah.
Like baseball, it's been around forever. Hit the ball, catch the ball, run around, get to home, score. It's so easy. Football, get the ball in, score. Soccer, get the ball in the net, score.
And if you're super drunk, you can still follow along.
Yeah. Golf, hit the ball the less amount of times. Like everything is very, very simple. You can rotate out teams year after year after year after year, and the sport never changes. NASCAR, going really fast in a circle. Really easy to follow when you're hammered. As Jeff Dunn would say, they're making a left turn. Like,
I saw a video and it's talking about, so like what you said about Rampage, yes, they deserve more money for sure, but they shouldn't get more money, right? Unless the eyeballs are there. And that's kind of the thing there is.
Not that they shouldn't. It's that unfortunately they won't, because the money doesn't exist yet.
Right. Well, it's like
not that they shouldn't.
NBA,
they just won't right now.
It's like the NBA WNBA argument, though. They don't have the same viewership as NBA, so therefore they just shouldn't get paid the same. I mean, they shouldn't make the same amount of money. They should get paid equally. They shouldn't get the same amount of money. And I saw a video and it was like, it was a post, and they're like, we don't want the same amount of money, we just want equal revenue share like the men get in the NBA. And then the guy's all goes into Google, and he's all, well, the WNBA lost $12 million last year, so actually you guys owe each woman in the WNBA owes 88,000 or something like that. I thought that was funny, but anyway,
Yeah.
it goes off of like, you've got to have the attention to make the money, you know? And so ultimately, do you think changing it to more of a positive perspective, like on the sport, what would get more eyeballs on it so that everyone should get, you know, paid like they deserve? Rampage, BMX, whatever it is, you know, because it's action sports are ripped off for sure.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. And you know, it's kind of like, to kind of go off that NBA, WNBA, and you know, I really don't like to get into the different genders things, but it's kind of like, you know, if like women fighting, they make a lot of money. People like to watch that. But like, this is being just entirely honest, like, what could the WNBA do to bring in money, or like to get more viewers over the regular NBA? It's kind of a hard system to battle, because you know, it's, people are already watching NBA. What would make them switch, you know? And that's what, if they wanted to bring more money into the sport, that's what they would have to do, is to get, you know, more viewers. And I'm kind of at a loss at what they would do. And that's kind of, I feel the same about BMX, is it's like, not only do you have to, you know, get people to understand it, you got to think, every time you want more viewers, you have to take those viewers from somewhere else. These viewers already exist.
That's
so
a good point. Yeah.
what can you do to pull them away from watching football instead? Like, what kind of marketing has to be done, and what kind of, you know, I see a lot, especially, you know, I watch every Crankworks event, and you can see them, the commentators, they're always doing these little commercial breaks and different little things. And you can tell that they're trying to talk for people who aren't, like, who don't watch it, you know, regularly, because they're doing a bunch of like very, very basic explanations. And they're like, oh, their bike is like this, they were on these kind of tires. And if you're new to slopestyle, but the problem is, they're doing that, but nobody that's new is watching it, because they didn't market it to new people beforehand. They're like, oh, Crankworks is live. Okay. Well, if you didn't follow Crankworks on Instagram, or you're not following the Crankworks sport already, like slopestyle, why would you tune into the live stream?
Right.
And so it's like, that to me is a little bit of a disconnect. But also, I think it's like, I think it's got to start like way smaller levels. Like, I think school shows, very beneficial for growing it. I think it's going to take a long time. School shows, and I think like local competitions, I think you need real life eyes on the sport in real life to get people to understand it. Like, if you stand at the base of like the box jump at Woodward, and you're standing right there, you know, you'll see that the box jump is taller than your head, my head, maybe not your head. and if you saw Logan Martin do just a simple 720 on the box, he's 10 feet above your head.
Right.
And you're like, whoa, you could really get hurt doing that. It changes your entire thinking of the sport. Whereas if you're watching a camera angle way far back on a two-dimensional screen, and that screen is your phone, I mean, just think of the difference in
it looks cool, yeah, but it doesn't look mind-boggling.
Yeah, it's you don't have the same perception of it, where, like I said, whereas football or anything like that, you don't need that. It's simple. It's, you're scoring. You're just scoring. Whereas like BMX, it needs to reach people like on a real life level first, before people will tune in to the competitions, because, you know, especially when you get into like the Olympics and judging and stuff, if you don't ride BMX, Like, I've watched plenty of contests with my girlfriend, and she's been to many contests with me. She's watched contests with me for the last 7 years. And even she, every time we watch a contest, she's stoked for our friends that ride, and just wants them to win. But I have to explain why someone scored higher than someone else every single time.
Because it's confusing.
It's very confusing. Like, if I showed you BMX for the first time and I showed you the first place run and the 10th place run, you wouldn't really be able to tell me why one was better than the other. Mm-hmm. Like, if it was your first time, because there's no just, you got more points. I mean, yeah, you got more points,
it's
but
not
why?
Subjective at all. There's like this editing podcast I've been watching. One of the things the guy stresses a lot is he's like, why should they care? Because so you go to YouTube right now, you've got all these videos and you're like, oh God, which one do I click on? Like, you have an overwhelming amount of choices on something to watch. And it's the same thing with sports, like, oh, am I gonna go watch my kid's baseball game? Am I gonna do this work assignment? Am I gonna watch football? Like, what am I gonna do? And you have all these options. And so, and I think the NFL does traditional sports do such a good job at kind of explaining to people why they should care. It's like, oh, you don't want to miss this game. Tom Brady for the Buccaneers is going against the Patriots. And everyone's like, oh God, that's crazy, and like, they should care about it because my favorite team's doing this. I want my favorite team to win, blah, 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 blah. But they do a lot to hype those things up and to break it down. Whereas, like you said, with Crankworks, they're like, we're live right now. And everyone's like, okay, well, so is this, it's like, and I should care about this more. But yeah, like why should they care about the sport? But it's kind of hard to come up with a solid reason for that if it doesn't make any sense and if you can't actually be there. Like, how many times have you taken a friend to the skate park? So like, you have friends who don't ride, okay? And they're like, oh yeah, Nick does tricks on a bike, and that disconnect is so real, because I think we do such a good job, like bike riders do such a good job making it look easy, and that's why I think of it more of an art form. It's like, you're doing this with the bike, you're making it look easy, you're making it look nice, and it's an artistic ability. But how many times have you like gone to the park with somebody and they're like, oh cool, like, let me try your bike, and they get there at the top of a bank, not even a quarter, and they're like, oh shit, like, this is way different in person. Like, that happens to me, quite a bit with people who've never ridden before, and you're like, oh yeah, like, it's actually kind of hard. And but they don't understand that just by watching it, because there's no real life connection to it.
Yeah. And it's weird. I think it's such a weird thing, which is, kind of why I wanted to get onto this topic today. Is it's just like, I feel like even if someone came and watched me in person and then got on the bike, they still don't get it. They still, think so? No, I mean, dude, the first time I took Taylor to Woodward, I did a double flip on the resi for her. Then I did a cork 7. Then I did a regular 7. She thought I did the same trick 3 times in a row. I was like, which one of those do you like better? And she was like, what do you mean? And I was like, out of those 3 tricks. And she's like, that wasn't the same trick every time? No. Like, they don't actually get it. And like Taylor, like I said, Taylor's been to my contest before. And if I get 4th place and someone else gets 1st, and I try to explain like why that person got 1st, like it doesn't resonate. Because BMX, I think it's like, I almost think you got to be good at it to understand the next level. Like if I, like a rider of our level, it's like, if someone gets on a bike for the first time ever and they can't go down a bank, they're like, oh, you're really good at this. They still don't really get it.
Yeah.
They learn like 15 tricks, learn how to dirt jump. They might start to understand. You know what I mean? Because I think it's just such a complex thing. Like, I don't think there's any other sport where so many things are happening. Like, you think of like a feast run, bars are spinning, bikes are spinning, legs are spinning. You're using every muscle in your legs, arms, head. Your head is doing, like, it's such a complex sport that unless you have experience in it, it does not make any sense. Like,
Right.
and it just doesn't. It's not like, it's not, and this is kind of, I hate this, singing. If you're a good singer,
You hate singing?
no, I hate the concept of what I'm about to tell you.
Oh.
If you're a good singer, people worship you. 100%. You know,
Sure.
you can either sing or you can't. And so it's very easy for people to go, oh, I can't sing. That person's incredible. And they're just like growing up, you know, people that could sing would sing in the talent show, and everyone's just like, oh my God, you're such a great singer. And just always were like, oh my God, this. I'm out there jumping 80-foot jumps on a snowboard, doing flips on bikes and stuff, play the drums. Nobody really cares. Because I don't think it has anything to do with like skill or talent. It has to do with the simple fact of, can someone else understand your actual skill level? And if they can't,
right.
your skill level is irrelevant to them because they don't get it.
Well, there are a lot of things that you look at and you just don't think too much about it. And then as you try it, the better you get at it, you kind of unlock things. Like think about making videos, editing, riding bikes, whatever it may be. Starting out, you're like, all right, like I'm doing this thing. Before you even started out, you didn't think anything of it. You're just like, oh, this is what it is. You got the blanket statement of it. And then, I mean, we could use bikes as the example. Like when I started riding, I started riding because I saw a guy grind a rail, and I was there in person, and I was like, that's kind of cool. I mostly liked how his bike was really colorful, but I was like, hey, that's kind of cool. So I got a bike and then tried tricks, and I was like, yo, this is hard. Like, wait a minute, you know, like that guy made it look easy grinding on that rail. This is hard. And so once I actually started to learn things, it wasn't that until then that I appreciated that guy's riding. So then I saw him around more. He did bigger tricks, and I didn't even know what a tail whip was at first. But then when I wanted to learn a tail whip, you see him do a tail whip, you're like, oh my God, that's crazy, because you've tried a tail whip before and you understand how hard it is. Whereas most people who haven't tried it at all, 90% of the population, they just see it as like riding a bike and doing crazy tricks. But yeah, once you actually try it, like everyone's tried to sing in the shower or just sing before, and then you're like, oh man, I suck at this. And so you've tried it and you're envious of someone who's good at it. But yeah, if it's something that you've never tried before, you can't feel any kind of way about it. You can't really genuinely appreciate it either. Like until I started making videos, you do this all the time. You talk about little things you notice in movies and stuff like that, continuity, you know, stuff like that. I've never paid any bit of attention to it until I started like editing a lot more and getting into that side of things. And now I think about it. But before, you know, stuff just passes you by, I guess, without much thought. And so do you need to introduce people to it? Like what if BMX was in schools? Like what if there was for PE, you know, today we're learning bunny hops. That'd be kind of cool. And then people would try it and have that kind of appreciation towards it. But would that be enough to immerse them into it so that they get a little bit of an understanding?
Yeah, I don't know. Cause I mean, you know, you mentioned the movies thing and the singing thing. I'm trying to think of how you could explain like the box. Like, let's say, I don't know if it'd be shaped like a pyramid. I don't know if it's like concentric circles.
What are you talking about?
So hold on. So this is what I'm trying to say.
I'm like, box.
So, okay. So singing, when you think of singing as being like, if you're someone who doesn't sing and you're looking at a good singer, you know, you're like, I can't sing, they can sing. So you're outside the circle.
I can sing. Thank you very much.
Whatever. So
all right, keep going.
They're outside the circle. Like you're a bad singer, you're outside the circle. You're a good singer, you're inside the circle.
Okay.
Well, then if you learned how to sing a little bit, you move inside the circle, and then you listen to them again and you're like, wow, they can really belt. So now they're inside of another circle because you can't belt. So now you're inside the singing circle.
Smaller.
Yeah, like the circle it's concentric circles. Like, so to me, you have
like
outside of BMX, and then you have all these people who are good at riding BMX in this circle. But in that circle keeps getting smaller, and I think the public, you can only see into the next
one
circle.
at a time. Yeah.
You can only see into
that's
one.
good.
Like, I just came up with that.
Oh, that's so good. Stop
Like,
patting it right
it's
now.
Like it's like drums. Like, you watch someone who can play the drums,
Right.
and you know in your head, you're like, okay, that person's good at the drums. You learn a basic beat, you go into a circle, and then you're like, oh, but those guys can play really fast.
Right.
And you're like, that's all you notice is that they're playing fast. You learn how to play faster. You jump into that next circle, and then you start going, well, wait a minute, they're playing like off time stuff, and they're doing a lot of like different single body coordination. So that you start to notice more and more. So with like BMX,
but the person outside of the circle sees all three people like, oh, they play the drums, and that's it. You know, the first guy who learns a basic beat, the guy that goes really fast, and the guy that does the offhand stuff. You look at all three, and you're like, oh, drums.
Yeah,
but it's only if you're within the circle you notice other things.
Yeah, and so with like BMX, it's like you're outside the circle, and then you've got people who can ride, and then and that's why you see dudes do a flip. You've never ridden bikes, you're like, that's crazy. You see a double flip, you're like, that's crazy, because that's what's going to stand out. Then you jump inside that circle, and you're like, okay, you start riding, and then you start realizing that circle goes deep and deep and deep, and that's why you end up like, you know, I can do a double flip in a 720, but like a nose manual bar, absolutely not. Yeah. You know, I can't. That's so hard. That's in a different circle. I'm not in that circle. And maybe there's like multiple circles in there.
Jump in directions too, though. You know, because like
the
direction I've gone with my riding's different than the direction you've gone, and like it's a deeper circle, but over here. Does that make any sense?
No, totally. I think BMX is like there's like this big circle, and then the circles get smaller, and then all of a sudden they go in a bunch of different directions, and that right there should explain to you, like, if we look at singing as being like, can sing, can always stay on key, can belt. Boom. That's like 3 circles inside each other. Boom. That's easy to follow.
Simple to understand.
BMX has like 300 circles. And if you're on the outside of that circle, it just looked like a freaking mess to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I cracked the code. I've cracked the code.
Football, you can catch, throw, you can run, you can catch.
And you can knock people over.
Yeah.
There's only 4 circles.
Right. And if you've played football, you kind of can see inside of those circles. You've already like uncovered it, right?
Oh, I mean, BMX, you haven't even had to have played football
too. You can see backwards. Like it's like you move through a circle, and then you can see behind you, but you still can't really see too far in front of you. You know?
Yeah.
Like whoa.
Like it literally takes
good.
It takes more experience. You got to break into a new circle.
Yeah.
To understand it. Like, I honestly don't even think that, I mean, okay, there are like people who really, really follow BMX who aren't good at it at all. And they understand because they've like mentally broken the circle, not physically.
Sure.
But otherwise, I think you would have to be a really high level rider to even understand how to score contests.
I was just gonna like this is off topic, but I was just gonna say, how do you feel about people judging contests who haven't broken through the circle? Like, imagine judging Logan Martin. I have no idea what it took to learn like a quad switch whip, you know? It's like, so I can't really assign a value to that because I don't know how hard it is realistically. I know how hard it looks, but realistically I haven't been inside that circle, and so it's like kind of ignorant of me to say, yo, that's way better than a double front flip. And it's like, way worse, you know?
Or exactly. It's the same of like, if someone does a backflip double bar spin on a jump and I do a double flip, I know I'm going to score higher, but which one's actually harder? Probably the flip double bar, but it's also...
Do the judges know?
The judges, I think they do. The thing is the double flip is more risky. It's more dangerous, and it's like overall impression, it's higher, you know, so it's going to score better. Like, I understand that, but I feel like that's such a weird thing about BMX. And, you know, again, this is just, it's one of those things you got to be in BMX to understand it. And so I think as the sport progresses, we just get farther and farther away from relating to the public because,
public. Yeah.
Because like, you know, you're really good at turn downs and manuals, and I'm not at all. I would rather do a double flip than a double whip. I think a double flip is way easier than a double whip. But the double flip is going to score higher, but someone else is not going to think that way. You're not going to think a double flip is easier than a double whip. Like,
right.
Because it's your perception of it. Your perception is you're more comfortable here and here and here, whereas I'm more comfortable here, here, and here. And so it's like, you're really always, at all times, you're judging something that honestly doesn't have a real basis for judging.
No,
like
it doesn't.
Like a double whip versus a double flip versus a triple whip here. Those are kind of more like, those would be comparable in someone's contest run. And part of me thinks that's where, to score those two together fairly, you actually have to look at the rest of the run to be able to fairly score those. Like if I'm doing only flip tricks and I do a double flip, that's going to score my double flip not as high because it clearly shows that that's all I'm doing, no variety. Whereas if someone does a triple whip and then they did 20 other whips in their run, no variety again. And that, again, that makes it even more complicated for the public to understand, because it's like, okay, then it's not even about the trick anymore. It's about how many different types of tricks can you do? Because otherwise, I think the judging is finally catching up to seeing, okay, if someone does a few crazy tricks, but they only do one type of trick, we can't really reward them better than someone who's doing a huge variety, because it's got to be, and like I said, it's so complicated. Like, that's why, like, Larry Edgar versus Logan Martin, entirely different styles of riding. Absolutely 100% different.
Imagine you're scrolling on Instagram, right? And you see Logan do a triple whip. You're like, wow, triple whip, that's crazy. You just carry on, right? But you see, let's see, you're scrolling along and you see Brandon Began do a triple whip. You're like, hold on. Like, and that's way more impressive because that's not something that you'd normally see from that person. But you have to be inside BMX to understand that. Like, you've done shows, I've done a handful of shows, and it's like, I feel like if you do a tuck no hander and a tail whip, people are, they're gonna clap the same, because from just a person watching that, you're like, wow, bike trick over jump. And then and it gets a little bit different. People just idolize flips for sure, but there's things like a double whip and then somebody does a 360. It's like, I think the double whip's harder, but the people that see that are like, wow, tricks, either way. And they're so disconnected from that you can't really appreciate where it's at. And is that bad? It's like you said, the circle, I don't know, it keeps getting bigger or something, but like, inside the sport, it progresses, so it gets deeper and deeper and deeper. But there's people outside that wall. It's like a big wall, and the general public just sees bike riding in general. And so, it's crazy to me that there's people out there right now just riding at a stupid level. It's progressed to a silly level. I think it's silly, some of the stuff people are doing.
Oh, they're doing stuff that you couldn't do in video games. You couldn't do this stuff in video games.
No, for real. Yeah. But for what? Like to make a fraction of somebody who runs the football. It's like, there's not very many football players, professional football players, so I get the pay gap, but it's like, why they're risking their life, genuinely risking their life for peanuts. And I talk about this a lot. It drives me crazy. And, you've got to really love it, I guess, to send it like that and understand that you're being severely underpaid. I don't know, man. Like, once I kind of was like, all right, I'm too old. I'm never going to be a professional rider. I'm just going to chill and make YouTube videos. I've started enjoying it a lot more. I'm not pressured to try and learn anything. I just ride my bike and it's fun for me. I'm not trying to get hurt or anything. And the people who watch me ride, who've never ridden BMX, are like, oh, it's good bike rider. You just have to be at a certain level, and you're grouped in with other good bike riders. And it's like, I'm not really that good, but thank you, and it's just such a weird thing, and people, they just don't understand it. And so,
no, it's honestly, it's a trip. And, like, cause I did the contest thing, I still do, but that pushing it gets really, really hard. But I can tell you right now, I don't know how much a paycheck would influence my ability to keep pushing it. And I think that's why it is what it is because BMX and mountain bikes, it really is such a personal thing that like if you weren't content doing it for no money, you wouldn't be content doing it for money.
Yeah.
You know, it's so difficult, and it's one of those things that I feel like it almost sucks you in. Like I had no plans of ever competing professionally or doing anything. I feel like just all of a sudden one day you go, holy shit, I'm at this level. How did I get here?
Yeah.
Like you get sucked into this whirlpool of like progressing, training, crashing, hurting yourself. And it just like the rest of the world kind of doesn't exist. And then all of a sudden you're at this level and you're like, I don't really know how I got here. And I think when you hit that point, that's when you go, holy shit, how do we go further? And and the thing is it starts to get scary because you've now scared yourself so much. Then you got to keep doing it to get that stuff comfortable. But then there's always the next thing up. You never get to get
always.
like, oh, I'm really good. Now I'm content. It's not like learning the guitar where you're like, oh, okay, I got really good. Now I can pretty much just coast. You can't. Like you got to keep going.
And the sport's explosively progressing. And if you want to keep up with those people, you've got to keep trying. And like, have you seen that Chi BMX kid? I shared it on the Dougster Bob story. I was like, when I was his age, I was picking my nose and eating dirt. But he's 6 years old.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, dude does a double truck over like an 8-foot spine.
I follow that kid, yeah.
And I'm like, where's the sport going to be in another 10 years? If you got 6-year-olds doing this, it's like, what's going to happen? It's like,
And that's one thing that is kind of cool is the fact that younger and younger and younger ages are getting into it and getting good. That shows
relatable
that
for other younger kids.
Yeah,
too.
and that shows though that it is growing. There is better perception of it. One, because parents are getting their kids into it at a younger age, but also, you show it's possible, and then someone sees someone that's 14 do it, then someone that's 12 is going to do it. You see someone that's 12 is going to do it. Someone that's 10 is going to do it, and it's just gonna, Whereas back in the day, people were 20 years old before they even knew about BMX, and it just keeps going. But real quick, I wanted to, before we finish up, you said you had just talked about it, and it was about contests and the judging, and when it comes to the judging and getting more watch time on TV, I kind of had this epiphany that like I honestly think the judging and the repetitiveness of it is kind of what really will hinder the watch time. I think you need to include more stories because, like, let's look at gymnastics, for example. Gymnastics, spin more, flip more, land perfect, is a little bit easier to follow. Still very complex, and honestly, sometimes I
still watch it like.
Yeah, I watch it and I see the scores and I'm like, I don't really know.
Yeah.
But, football, it's like you're constantly watching this back and forth end game. It's like, oh, who's gonna score before the buzzer? Who's gonna win?
Right.
It's very easy to like stay entertained because you want to figure out the outcome. You have a rider list of 20 riders. Everyone's doing things. You're seeing these scores, and if you're not really understanding the scores or you don't really know anything about the riders, like I am not interested in football. And if you handed me a beer and sat me down with a football game, and everyone else at the like the dinner or the lunch, is entertained, I'm gonna just vote for whichever team they're all not going for, and then all of a sudden it becomes a fun thing.
Yeah.
Whereas BMX, because it's like one guy at a time, and then they're not understanding why someone scored higher. I think it just loses their interest because they're like, well, I don't get it, which is really, I think comes the whole point of today's episode is, does the public get it? I don't think they get it at all.
No, I think if you've tried it, if like a lot of people that might watch this have been trying to progress and been riding a little bit, I think they understand. It's like, oh, this is kind of hard. There's a lot of complexity to it. But my mom, like, I've been riding forever, she still doesn't understand it. It's just like you've got to really be in it to understand it, and like, oh, cool, that's a trick and everything like that. But no, they don't understand it. Would you wait on that? I wanted to say, like, BMX YouTubers, in my opinion, are way more beneficial for the sport than the contest riders, because, like you said, it tells a story. Like Scotty, imagine what Scotty's doing with his thing. He's telling stories, and it's so much more engaging than watching somebody ride a contest. And you've got the BMX Caden kid, you've got Panza, that just doing stuff on bikes. And like BMX Caden, I just pulled it up, has like 338 million views altogether. That's pretty solid, that's pretty crazy. And that does a lot to put that in front of the public. Like, do you think that many people have watched BMX in the X Games? I don't know. Not on freaking ESPN Plus, that's for sure, or whatever they want to sell you. But so what if we did a fun thing here? Okay, so you guys type right now, how would you help the public understand the sport? So that's a question for you guys, but that's the question for Nick. Nick is going to answer this question. How is he going to, what would you do if you were the CEO of BMX? How would you help grow it and help the public understand, get rid of that disconnect, Yes. Put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good question. Definitely, I think grassroots would be the way. You need foot soldiers, I think, because I think, you said the YouTubers are doing more than the big guys. You need both, I think. You need the star achievements, you need the poster childs, like that are going to be like in the spotlight. They're the ones showing what the full potential is. You need them pushing the sport, driving it. But we're getting this, shift to where with like YouTube and social media, you no longer have to be anywhere close to the best at any topic, any subject, any sport to be very successful in it and very well liked in the community. And honestly, that's what we need more of is, like we were talking about the circle. The guys that we're supposed to be watching are very, very in the middle of that circle. They're so far away. But imagine we had more people creating content who are literally just barely into it. Like, if someone's like,
'cause then it's more relatable.
Yeah, like someone making YouTube content. Like, so this is like, I really urge anyone who wants to ride to just, right when you start riding, just immediately start making videos.
Document it. Yeah.
Because you'd be surprised if you just get into BMX. One, after your year, you do a 1 year of BMX progress video, shit's gonna blow up. People love those types of videos. Like,
but everyone's too subconscious to even start it.
Self-conscious is the word.
Self-conscious. 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 Sorry.
But no, because I mean, imagine how many more people that like aren't into the sport or are at a very like beginner level would enjoy watching you progress like your manuals and your jumps and like stuff like that they can really closely relate to, or they're going through the same thing right now. I'm out here working on like, 720 bar. People watch it on YouTube, they're like, okay, but I go out there and do a 7-day manual challenge. Everyone loves it. It's because it's more relatable. So I think the more people creating content, and then I think it would eventually become this thing where it's like, it's a perfect sport to really take over the internet and make, like, basically, you've got your little group of buddies that you session with, every day.
Yeah.
Imagine the internet and YouTube becomes this place where like everyone who's riding is creating content and sessions and like interacting with each other. And then they're like spreading and growing, and then that becomes like part of it. And like I said, so you need like foot soldiers. And I think the only people that are going to grow BMX are the people who are really new to it. Or if you are, you know, big top pro, like Daniel Dares is doing a great job, you know, in Venezuela, and like he changed, you know, only posting in Venezuelan, like or Portuguese, whatever language he speaks. Sorry, I don't know. That wasn't. I just don't actually know.
Skipped that day in history class when we talked about that.
But he's, you know, doing so much for his community, and I know Logan is too. And a lot of guys are. The guys that have the budget and the money to be helpful, they are. But it's easier for people who aren't as good to just do small increments. I think all those little small steps of getting more people into the sport are what's really going to help it. I don't think big brand deals and stuff are going to get more people into it. And if you have people riding BMX, they will watch BMX on TV.
For sure.
Yeah, because they'll understand it more.
You're part of that culture. You're part of that. Man, you said something and I was like, whoa, that's a really good point. There's in the Discord, there's a guy that just 9 Mil, I think is his name in there. He just started and he posted a video on his YouTube, and he just posts like vlog stuff anyway. And so I think it was pretty normal for him, but he put like, it was his first time at the skate park. And so he put that in his video and he shared it, you know, and a lot of the guys in there are like, yo, this is sick. And it's nothing crazy. It's just his first time at the park. He's like, I sucked, you know, because it's his first time. And, but everyone could relate to that. You know, all the people who are just looking for a bike or just buying their bike, they're like, hey, this is what it's going to be like for me. I understand that. And like, I could feel a sense of it. And then if I go, hey guys, like, let's go to the skate park. I'm going to try to learn double whips. And everyone's like, okay, like that's kind of cool. I think I agree where you said you need those top people, right? Because that gives somebody something to strive for. So they do go hand in hand. And I think that's a really good way to put it, is that you've got the Logans who are just crazy and that everyone's kind of striving for. But then you have the people farther outside the circle who make it easy to kind of step into it and understand and start going that way. Yeah, solid. I think that
so.
I
think one point on that, and we'll wrap up.
No, now you ask me.
It's a touchy one. Yeah. What? Oh no. Who? We've got a YouTuber who's not that good, big following, and then we've got big top BMX athlete, also big following. Who's selling more bikes? That is a question for you guys. You can comment. We're not going to comment on it. Unless
that's
Doug
hard to
wants
say, though. I mean, I'm thinking, because I really don't know. It's hard to think, like, you know, Adam got on Stranger because of his following more than anything. Like, he was a decent bike rider, but he got on Stranger to help sell bikes. I think Panza's selling tons of Colts, but Panza's also pretty talented. And so that's hard to say, but YouTube big following, I'd probably say that,
I think,
but you guys agree or disagree in the comments.
Yeah, my thought is that it's two entirely different markets, and brands should think of it that way. Logan would be selling Logan's signature frames to people who are already in the sport who think that's going to give them an edge. YouTubers are selling completes and more entry-level bikes. They're two entirely different marketing strategies to sell two completely different products.
Do you think brands realize that?
I don't, actually. I don't think they do. Mountain Bike's got a hold of it. They figured it out. Like Rose Bikes making a killing off of like my friends Mark and Lucas.
Yeah.
They're
just put them together there, Marcus.
Yeah, Marcus, those Germans. Those guys sell so many bikes for Rose, like, because
to new riders.
Yeah, because they make a complete, and it's like a really good mountain bike complete. Whereas, like something like Specialized, I don't even think Specialized has a YouTuber. Like, I don't even think Specialized sponsors anyone who's like a big dirt jump YouTuber, maybe like enduro, I don't know. But, and then on the tour, Nikolai is the only one riding Specialized. So if Nikolai is not selling bikes, then it's all the bike shops that are selling it. But it's a weird thing. Like it's all in how a brand chooses to market, really.
Yeah.
That ad spend. I don't know.
Yeah.
I would, if I was a brand
discussion.
owner, I would go more for the YouTubers, because I think the
Yeah.
YouTubers would reach people better. Newer
Yeah.
people.
Well, and I think they have a better communication with their audience. Like Logan has a lot of fans, but is he able to make a video? Like, do they watch him for his personality and his charisma and stuff like that? Or do they watch him for his bike riding? Like if Logan did a vlog, which he's done some in his YouTube, he doesn't have a whole bunch of followers there, but on his Instagram he does. And it's because everyone likes the crazy clips. But where the YouTuber that has a good connection with them could just be like, yo, what's up guys? Like, look at this bike. This is crazy. I think that message would resonate more from that person than it would from just a crazy bike rider.
Yeah.
Just because it's just different.
Well, and I think that's the thing. I think a lot of top athletes are leaving a lot on the table.
No,
Because
I agree.
You know, because I've filmed with Logan and got to film with him for a week at Woodward a couple years ago, and like really cool dude, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Good
like
personality.
cool personality. Like I made a couple of vlogs with him for the Hyper BMX channel, and you know, hanging out with him and Jay Tui and R Willie and Jake Leva, getting the four of them together, like it was a lot of fun. And I think if brands pushed more of that kind of content, which is why I was doing it with Hyper, I think because not only is Logan so good, if he had like more of the Dave Mirra, like up in your face, putting his
Right.
personality in your face, then, you know, I just think like, I think people who weren't interested in BMX would know who Logan Martin was.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's kind of like Shaun White. Shaun White is, everyone knows who freaking Shaun White is, you know, but
Yeah.
it's because he's constantly, you know, he was when it was TV, he was in your face. But anyways, we're digressing.
Well,
But
that's crazy though. I mean, I don't know. We could talk about that topic forever. We should, I don't know what we would subtopic that as its own episode, but I have a lot to say there. But yeah, we're at an hour. We don't want to bore you guys. We got to film another episode. So anyway, come back to the next episode where we tell you what RAD podcast stands for, because you don't know yet, but I don't know. I think
Radcast.
That's it. Radcast.